Hello, and welcome to the third episode of Turbocharged by SASE, Network Transformation in 2021, a six-part series where we're taking a deep dive into SASE and how it can transform digital businesses. In this third episode, we're looking at how enterprises can implement SASE models and what best practices can set organizations up for SASE success. I'm John Burke, CTO at Nemertes. Today, I'm joined by Eyal Webber-Zvik, VP of Product Marketing at Cato Networks. Welcome, Eyal.
Hi.
For those of you who are not familiar with Nemertes, we are a research firm focused on understanding the business value that enterprises can realize by deploying emerging technologies. And therefore, we're always keeping our eye on things that are at the front edge of the technology curve, things like SASE. And it's a real pleasure to get to talk to Eyal today about what makes organizations successful as they deploy SASE. Eyal?
Thank you very much, John. It's a pleasure to be here again.
So in episodes 1 and 2, we discussed what SASE is and how enterprises can use it for zero-trust network access. Today, we're discussing best practices for implementing SASE in the enterprise. So let's start with the start of the SASE implementation journey. What do IT and security leaders in enterprises need to be aware of before embarking on their SASE journey?
So I think the first and most important point is that IT need to be very focused on what they are trying to solve and why SASE is the right solution for their problems. Whether it's a problem with their agility, with remote access, with network and application performance, or the inability to properly secure the enterprise, they need to be 100% on top of what they want to achieve. And based on those goals, there can be different paths to embarking on a SASE platform. And you can start with one. We always say that it's a gradual deployment strategy. You start with the most dominant pane that you have, and you continue and move more of your on-prem features up to the SASE cloud as you need to in the future.
We see a similar array of different on-ramps to SASE in our research. Some people come at it from the CASB direction, from the network access direction, but whichever start point people come from, one thing we think is really important before they start down this road is keeping in mind what they're trying to achieve for their end users. It's not just about, oh, I'm going to replace this old security technology with this new security technology. It's what am I trying to accomplish for my end users? Am I trying to take a process that takes them 4 minutes now and get it down to 10 seconds? Am I trying to get this process that is often prone to errors and resets and get rid of it with something more reliable? What are their end goals for their end users? And that is a great way to stay grounded in taking the rest of the steps down this path.
So I agree. I think when you look at, who IT teams need to report to, they need to report to their upper management and make sure that they make the right technological choices, and they need to report to their users. So users would keep them focused on the user specific needs and make sure that they are addressing it, but they can very often, and not their fault, make a mistake and solve user performance issues with point solutions. The value of SASE is that it's a long-term, multi-year strategy of retransforming the network, not only to address current and existing pains, but also future pains, both ones that we know that are coming, such as technology refresh, and ones that we don't know that's coming, like COVID and everybody needs to switch to work from home. So they need to make sure that when they move to SASE, regardless of what is the on-ramp that they are taking, they have a clear strategy on how they are going to evolve and transform their network to be SASE-based in the next 3 to 5 years at minimum.
Yep, having a clear time frame in mind very much helps. And also the full scope of it in mind as they set off on that first step very much helps. But you're touching on this issue of who IT is reporting to and who's benefiting from the deployment. And so, that's really talking about the stakeholders in the SASE deployment. And one of the things that we're always talking through with the people that we do research with, that we're always talking through with the clients we advise, is the importance of continually engaging stakeholders in everything from deciding which technologies to pursue to all the way through the implementation process and then production use. So let's talk for a minute about how SASE benefits not just IT, not just the CIO in achieving their goals, but the CTO, the CISO, and beyond that, the CEO, the CFO, everybody in upper leadership. Why should we be having conversations with all of them, and what are we going to be telling them the benefits are?
I think it's a very, very important point. The SASE project usually starts from the networking team, but not always. It can also start from the application delivery team or from the security teams. But there's obviously multiple teams that are involved in a SASE project. Even if they're not involved in the first stage, they will be involved after. If we're starting with replacing MPLS and we want to replace the physical firewalls after, then the networking team who is driving the project today also needs to include the security team and the CISO in the future. But it goes to additional C-level stakeholders, because what has happened over the last 2 decades is that every time that IT team faced a challenge, they solved it with a point solution. And that continuously increased the complexity of managing the network. And it made the network so complex that, first of all, it got out of control for many IT organizations. And second, it made them business growth inhibitors. Every time the business need to make a radical change, an adjustment to market dynamics, go through an M&A, expand globally, migrate to the cloud, when you're built on legacy point solutions, all those projects are super complex to achieve. And I think it's frustrating for IT teams that when the CEO or the CFO comes and say, I want cost effectiveness through cloud migration, I want to accelerate growth through M&A, they come back and say, sure, but we need 3 to 6 months to build the infrastructure for that. So when they migrate to SASE, they can actually achieve all those projects in 10 to 20% of the time it used to take before. It's coming from months to few weeks or few days because of the nature of the SASE architecture and what it can do. And from that point, there is great value to the CEO and to the CFO and to the CTO in terms of what they can achieve to address the competition in their business on one side, but there's also great value to the IT teams because they're transitioning from being business growth inhibitors to the champions that help drive business success and can enable all the underlying technology super fast and be the first one to reach their goals in the organization.
As someone I was interviewing recently put it, allowing us in IT to move at the speed the business wants to move and not constraining the business to move at the speed the CISO exactly. requires for security. So that is leading us into the question of then requirements and what the requirements for a SASE solution will be for any given organization and how to correctly identify all the requirements going in before you start looking for the solution to fulfill all those requirements. What should people be thinking about when they think about the requirements?
I think people should break apart the requirements and the solution to those requirements. I think a very good advice that I often give is tell yourself, figure out what you're trying to achieve, not how you're going to achieve it, because you're usually constrained with the solutions that you're familiar with, but think about what you're trying to achieve. And then educate yourself on SASE and see how SASE solves those goals or helps you get to those goals. Maybe SASE is not the solution, but then those different projects, and this is not our session here, but when you need to accelerate the network, improve security, support remote workforce, global organizations, M&As, business dynamics, all those things, that you used to suffer from as an IT organization, map them down on paper or on a digital document, and then figure out exactly what you want to achieve. And a great thing to help you get to that point is to educate yourself on SASE. Cato offers a full certification path on SASE. You can educate both on the architecture and the business pains and business needs that SASE solves. There are also other resources. Of course, I would recommend ours. But it would help you understand and map the things from needs to the available solutions.
Absolutely. We always stress with folks that the selection of products is the very last stage in any kind of technology strategy development. And the selection of even solution groups is second to last, and that there are multiple stages that come before that, starting with the business strategy and what the business is trying to achieve. And always starting from that point, as much as you can get clarity on that from business leadership, letting that drive the rest of the exercise in developing a technology strategy, and then figuring out what the requirements for any specific solution type will be.
I totally agree, and I think maybe another point to add to that is that IT teams need to be prepared for the unpredictable. I think what COVID has taught us all very well is that we can stack up as many technologies as we want. Some of them can sustain unpredictable events and unfortunate events like COVID-19, and some can't. We know for a fact that everything that is cloud is far more resilient to unpredictable events. All the cloud providers today, during the last year, has accelerated growth and business success because they were able to meet the demands of the users wherever they are. And I think this is one example of when you map your needs, you also need to make sure that the solution you are choosing can also ready you for the unpredictable, that it can stand any business it can support any business continuity plan. It can support any form of distribution of the workforce, that crises that you can think of and imagine and write down in your BCP documents are covered by that solution to the largest degree that you can imagine. I think that's also very important because it's easy to map the known needs and it's difficult to map the unknowns, but we've learned that we have to be prepared for those as well.
We talk about that in terms of technology principles, that you're looking for any of your solutions to support or adhere to or embody. Cloud first or cloud friendliness is one. For fast and easy scaling up and down, that's another. You were talking earlier about complexity, and while complexity itself is no sin, unnecessary complexity definitely is a problem. As you say, it's a boat anchor wrapped around the ankles of anybody who's trying to build up a good head of steam as they sprint towards some new opportunity. So looking for simplification in the environment, that's another principle that we often advise folks to adopt and think about with respect to every technology choice they make. So beyond requirements mapping, any SASE effort is going to be led by folks in IT and security. How can they best manage the achieving that meeting of minds with leadership in the rest of the business, and keeping that convergence of interests in focus as they proceed through some kind of SASE life cycle?
I'll say something from a personal experience. I've been with Cato for a little over 5 years, and we were always afraid that selling a solution that convergence, network, and security would put us in a point where we are standing like a parent between the networking teams and the security team who are fighting with each other. And I have to admit that to date, I haven't seen this happening. I think this is kind of an urban legend these days. I think that networking and security teams are already collaborating very well today. And I think that the benefits that a SASE platform can bring to this collaboration through simple interfaces, through shared policy structures and objects and models, through shared visibility and the ability to troubleshoot events, whether they come from the network or the security side of things. I think that makes everybody happier, more focused on their important day-to-day work, not on the maintenance of their stacks. And it just increases collaboration. I think the trend and the motion towards cross-team collaboration has already been in the industry before the introduction of SASE. And I think SASE is like the additional motivation to continue in that direction.
We saw a lot of the armed standoff between network and security teams begin to erode and be healed as virtualization accelerated about 10 years ago and began to morph into movement into the cloud, and everybody realized that all of their operating models were being upset and they had to figure out how to work together effectively to deliver all of the benefits of these new environments without just throwing the doors open on risk. So yeah, like you, I think that that is an old image that we still carry along with us, but that has been eroded considerably in most enterprises. I mean, certainly there are still places, but by and large, the we're all in this together mindset seems to be replacing that steadily.
I think, you know, it's coming from a very human nature concern about job security, which we all have, and that's super legitimate. And I think sometimes those guys or girls from the networking and the IT and the security teams need to get hands-on on the SASE platform, usually through a POC, if they haven't acquired it yet, and see that not only that it doesn't impose any risk to their jobs, it can actually help them do their jobs better. It can move them from the defocus that they have and labor invested in maintenance into actually building, controlling, monitoring, and maintaining the right policies to support what the business needs. Again, we're going back to the high-level vision of where the business needs to go. What's the CEO vision and the CIO vision, and how IT teams accommodate that. This is where they need to be focused, not on keeping appliances running, not overheating, not running out of memory. This is labor that no one wants to deal with anymore. So a SASE solution that brings the collaboration across the team and gives the professionals the ability to focus on what their core responsibilities are, I think that's of great value. And it's definitely the opposite of a job security concern.
Absolutely. I mean, usually when we talk about folks in networking and security or talk with them, none of them is worried about losing their job. Sometimes they're hoping to lose at least one of their jobs because they're wearing so many different hats and have such a massive backlog of things they'll never get to that having some piece of it lifted off would free them up to do other things. But more importantly, and I think you touched on a really good one, doing more important things for the organization. I've over the years, and I've been with Nemertes since 2005. Over the years, I've interviewed many security engineers who basically did firewall rules all day, every day. But I never talked to one who wanted to be doing firewall rules all day, every day. They had a picture of themselves as being more useful to the organization at a higher level, and technologies that make that possible are a welcome change.
I agree. And by the way, I just want to mention that this conversation that we're having is probably raising a lot of questions with our audience. So they are free to submit the questions in the panel on the right, and we'll try to address them. And if they're not seeing this live, so they can still submit questions and we'll follow up and answer after. We're more than happy to expand this conversation beyond just the two of us.
Absolutely. So that question of job security is often the flip side of a conversation about skill sets. And does the staff you have the skills you need to achieve what you're trying to achieve? Does SASE change that consideration in some way?
I think it does to some extent. I think that the proliferation of managed services, often sold by telcos and MSSPs, is the evidence that there is a shortage in skilled staff. So we understand that. I think it's a known fact in the industry. I can say that with Cato SASE, we've done a huge work around the simplification and automation of processes that were being executed manually before this. It could be very easy for us to just copy-paste things that were done on other solutions from other vendors and just replicate it to a cloud service. But one of our goals was to introduce a high degree of simplicity. It doesn't mean that a network engineer doesn't have to go through CCNA and basic training and understand network protocols, but it does mean that they no longer have to scan through huge routing tables and find missing routing or subnets because the system does it for them. They still need to have the knowledge, but they need to have the knowledge in order to orchestrate it. It's something that you also learn in management courses. You don't need to be an expert on what the people that you manage are doing, but you need to have a good enough understanding in order to manage them and direct them correctly. So look at it in the same way, right? If you're managing an IT infrastructure, you don't need to understand all the bolts and knobs, but you need to understand what is happening in order to manage and operate it correctly and efficiently.
One of the things that we see constantly is that the most precious resource in any IT department is human attention. And the degree to which a SASE solution can submerge things in automation that previously required human attention to accomplish, the greater the sort of overall organizational leverage that solution provides, because it lets that human attention go to places where it's far more important to have it focused. So let's talk a little bit more about the technology stack. We're talking a lot about automation and scalability and all these things. What are some best practices businesses can follow when they're bringing SASE into their technology stack?
So it all comes back to building the right SASE strategy, right? They need to make sure that they build this. It's not a tactical decision, it's a strategy. IT understand today that their WAN is going through a transformation journey, just like digital transformation is happening to businesses. And they need to make sure that their SASE, the SASE that they're onboarding, can meet all their at least foreseen and visible demands. And let's take an example that they start with replacing MPLS with the SASE that has SD-WAN and a global private backbone. And this can replace the existing network, which is a legacy and rigid network, with an advanced high-speed, high-bandwidth, high-capacity global network. The next thing they need to do is make sure that the awareness of the SASE infrastructure doesn't slip away from their minds. So when they hit the firewall refresh phase, they know that the capabilities are there and not automatically go to, search around for what is the best firewall to buy today, but instead of that, turn on the firewall feature of the SASE platform. Same goes for ZTNA and for cloud migration. Always keep in mind that you've already made a strategic decision to go with the SASE. And every time you have new demands, new requirements, new challenges that you need to face, go back to your SASE platform, see what is there, see what capabilities you can use from something that you've already purchased and paid for and is paying for. It's a service, and how that can meet the new demands or the demands that the time has come to address. And also keep in mind that when a SASE is a true cloud native solution, it continues, and it's not a virtual appliance in the cloud, it continues to evolve at a very, very high pace. Here at Cato, we release a new version to our entire cloud every other week. It means that our customers need to spend a few minutes every Monday morning and read every other Monday morning and read the release notes and point down on paper new features that we introduce that they can use in the future. So when those demands rise, they know that they have these capabilities on our SASE platform.
We see another aspect of fitting SASE into the environment being what you integrate it to that it doesn't itself provide. And so, for example, in our most recent round of research, we just asked folks what they were integrating their SASE solutions with. And what came to the top most often was their enterprise desktop visibility products. So not the anti-malware per se, but the EDR products that give them visibility into what's going on the endpoint and make the endpoint part of the security monitoring network, if you will. And looking for solutions that make that kind of integration straightforward and that expect to expand their pool of integrations over time as the security that takes place outside the borders of what we consider SASE continues to expand. We think that's one of the most important things to think about looking ahead. Whatever your 3 to 5 year journey for integrating your security landscape is, making sure SASE fits into that as you start down that path.
I agree with you 100%. I think right now SASE is securing the network layer. We still have the application security on the top, and we have the endpoint security at the bottom, if I try to visualize this. And definitely in the future, I can't speak specifically about Cato's roadmap, but definitely in the future, we're going to see integration and convergence in those domains as well. The network is the center, but the more visibility, the more shared context there is, the better for everyone. So it's definitely going in that direction. Each vendor is maturing different capabilities at their own pace, but I think this is where they're going, and it resonates with what I said. You have to stay on top of the evolution of the SASE platform that you are using, so you make sure that you're not missing new functionalities and new capabilities that can be very, very beneficial.
And we're touching here on also the fact that unlike most previous generations of security solutions, even ones that rolled up under them lots of previous point solutions into a new sort of suite of solutions intimately integrated, the SASE really extends outwards from wherever you're managing it. It extends to all the edges in the enterprise. The people, for folks who are using zero-trust networking, or network access, the branch offices, outposts in the clouds, data centers. And it's really, for the first time, a security solution that touches every aspect of the enterprise infrastructure. So how can a business be sure that it's actually extending SASE completely to all those edges?
I think it's something that is going to happen naturally to enterprises that build a SASE strategy. I think that when you look at it from a SASE perspective, there is no more physical location. There is no more a place where the data is or a place where the users are. There is a user, and there's a resource, and there is the thing that stands in between that achieves the connectivity and that enforces the security. And this is what the SASE does. When you go up and you start your SASE journey, the language, the terminology in which IT teams are starting to use is not locations and not servers, but users groups, organizational units, applications, resources, data repository, cloud applications. This is what you're speaking about, because when I'm hosting, it's already happening, right? When I'm hosting something on AWS or Azure, I know it's in a certain city in a data center, but I don't know exactly where. I don't know what is the rack and what floor and the server serial number. I don't care about it. It's somewhere virtually in the cloud. And SASE again cloudifies those things. It creates a level of abstraction that, like we said before, takes away or takes the focus to the right places of setting the policies between users. And users doesn't have to be human users. It can be IoTs as well. But between users and endpoints to applications and resources. And once you're on a SASE platform, this kind of I don't want to say evolution, but this kind of change or switch in the terminology and the way the conversation is being spoken is happening automatically.
And that change in language is tremendously important to how folks in IT and security think about their job and think about what it is that they're doing for the organization. And we went through this, with the network a long time ago. If you think your job is the router and the health of the router, you're missing the point that what you're doing is providing access to enterprise services to enterprise users. So thinking in terms of users and services is a hugely important shift in thinking. You brought up the issue of cloud and the fact that although something's in the cloud and you probably know where it is at any given moment if you check, it can be in a different place in another moment because of some kind of equipment failure or network failure that forces a failover from one region to another, say, or one availability zone to another. So you're providing continuous secured access to things that is independent of where they are on the service side. On the user side, is SASE the tool for the moment for providing that kind of seamless transition between working remotely and working in an office, a corporate office somewhere?
Absolutely, yes. I'm trying to think what is the best analogy to that. And I think, if you're using Office 365 or Google for Business or almost any cloud service provider, the chances of outages are super low. If a server or a data center fails, I'm automatically migrated to the next best point of presence or data center to serve my tenant in this cloud service or cloud application. The same thing happens when you move your security and networking up to a true cloud service. But it has to be cloud native because you can't jump virtual machines from one data center to another. It has to be a pure software that is detached from virtualization. But think about it. I'm a user. Right now, as you can see in my background, I'm in the office. So I'm connected to the nearest POP to my office. And when I travel tomorrow, hopefully, when the skies open again, I travel to Europe or to the United States, I will connect to the best Cato POP that is near my whereabout at any given moment. And if that POP suffers from a failure or any issues, the next best POP would serve me. I will always have something, some instance, some presence in the cloud that is close to me that would serve my needs. In rare events, I would actually feel a performance degradation. It's very unlikely because the POP density is so high that there's always a POP within another 5 milliseconds round trip time from me. But there is always someone to serve me. It goes for the user that connect on one side, and it goes for the applications and the resources that connect from the other side. If we have a data center, a customer has a data center or an AWS in Frankfurt, it's connected to the Frankfurt POP. If the Frankfurt POP has issues, it will automatically go to the POP in Amsterdam in the Netherlands. The difference, 5 milliseconds round trip time. No one would notice it. They would only see it in the logs if someone would care to look at the logs of the connectivity events. But it happens so seamlessly, and that's the great part of it, right? You don't need to build redundant data centers. You don't need to build regional hubs anymore. You're not worried about backhauling to a single point of failure. All those worries just go away.
And at a more prosaic level, you're not dealing with the security that's being applied to users in offices in an entirely different way and using an entirely different set of technologies than you're dealing with the security that's applied to users who are coming in from their homes or somewhere else outside a corporate facility. There's a level of, again, simplification there that is sorely needed oxygen for folks in IT who should be focusing attention on other things.
That's true, but this is actually a point worth highlighting because this is one of the ways that IT teams can evaluate a true SASE. If they need to build separate policies for users working from remote and users working from the office, then something is not truly converged. It's an integration of a ZTNA portfolio product with an SD-WAN or some kind of networking and other security portfolio product. A true SASE would give you the ability to set a rule that says Eyal can access a resource. And as IT, I don't care where Eyal is. I don't care how Eyal connects, if he's in the office, if he's working from remote, hotel, work from home. They identify me. They identify my posture in terms of the device that I'm using to connect, whether it's a BYOD or corporate device, and the security posture of that device. And based on that, a decision is taken on whether or not I should access the resource that I'm trying to reach. So the concept of a physical location becomes completely irrelevant.
Except insofar as it applies to the security posture of the device that you're using. Yeah. So there's lots going on here. There's lots of on-ramps into SASE. There's lots of potential branchings of your path once you've started down that road. Where do you think most organizations are in their SASE journeys?
I think very early. I think everybody knows that this is something that they're going to go into. I think the buzz in the industry is so loud, and all the analysts like Nemertes and others are endorsing for SASE and for the simplification and the agility that SASE brings. But I think many organizations are still on their legacy solutions, and they need to find the first opportunity to start their SASE journey. They really need to actively look for that in order to stay ahead and not stay behind, or where the industry is and where their competition or competing businesses are. Because if they don't start the SASE today, their competitors will start the SASE today or tomorrow, and then they will get the advantage in terms of supporting a digital organization that they were slow to adopt. And I think, if people are here watching us having this wonderful conversation today because they care about SASE, because they're interested in SASE, and I think it's very important that everybody in the industry understands that this is where things are going. It's a force of cloudification that is not going away. And you need to educate yourself, whether it's through certifications like we offer or through other resources, or downloading white papers and reading tons of materials. IT teams need to understand this is where the industry is going. The sooner I get myself educated and professional on this, the better it is for me in my own professional career as well as to the organization that I'm working for.
In our most recent study, we saw that a little over a third of folks said they started their SASE adoption. And for a lot of them, that is dropping a SASE solution into the role of CASB and expecting to expand out from there. For others, it is about that secure access edge and replacing their VPNs during the COVID crisis. This was a strong motivator and expecting to expand out from there. A similar number on the other end, looking at secure web gateway functionality as the motivator gets them in and expanding out from there. And about as many planning on starting to deploy this year in 2021. Mm-hmm. So, not everybody's going to follow through on that plan. In our past research, 2/3 to 3/4 of the folks who say they're doing something this year actually get to it. So, we may get to the point where half of companies have begun to deploy SASE, in early to mid 2022, which is a huge, rapid transition, even more rapid in some ways than the one to SD-WAN. And
I agree.
In part impelled by it because, of course, some SASE solutions provide SD-WAN type functionality as well as the security underlayment. And from our perspective, this is a transformation that's going to happen pretty rapidly, more rapidly than we're used to seeing. And as with SD-WAN, indicating a new paradigm for deploying solutions, one that's focused on breadth of solution and speed of deployment rather than a depth-focused approach where people are always focused on that huge list of features and a deep dive into a point solution of a point problem. So we think the journey is going to proceed pretty quickly for a lot of organizations, if not most.
You know, it's very interesting. I think my personal experience is that the share or the distribution between early adopters and late adopters is shifting. Mm-hmm. Many are becoming early adopters because they understand that there is value in early adoption of new technologies. That's one. The second thing is that since the announcement of the SASE acronym by Gartner, but I think now everybody speaks that language, we've seen the prediction of the adoption rate moving from a transformation change 5 to 7 years into the future to something that is going to happen within the next 1, 2, 3 years at most with the most conservative analysts. It's definitely happening. And I think the proof that cloudification can work for things that you would never imagine to cloudify, exchange services, CRMs, voice over IP. Who would think you can take voice over IP to the cloud? But now everybody's UCASing. Yeah. It's happening. And people understand that and they want to act fast. And I'm very appreciative of that.
Yeah, all these technologies lower the barrier to adoption. They make it easier to try something than it ever has been before without having to, commit a 5-year budget to it. So yes, that early adopter to late adopter ratio is definitely shifting. Do you have any customers who are, at the far end of their SASE journey, who've gotten, to the end point, basically?
Well, absolutely, yes. So Cato has almost 1,000 customers, enterprise customers worldwide to date, and some of them have been with us from the very beginning. And since SASE was our vision, even before it was called SASE, so we consider them full SASE deployments. Some of them started with just replacing their MPLS with our SD-WAN and private backbone. Some started with our cloud security service. But all of them eventually, not all of them, but almost all of them, eventually transitioned all their capabilities or all their point solutions into our cloud service. I think the more interesting thing is to see how many organizations are making this leapfrog and taking all our SASE capabilities from the get-go, not starting with one piece, but collapsing everything in. Because even if they're already invested in, in appliance-based security stack, and they're 3 years into the 5 years life cycle of those appliances, the value of the convergence and simplicity and visibility and ease of use is so big that they are willing to, to compromise those additional 2 years already paid for of those appliances for the benefit that they get from a converged SASE solution. And we're seeing more and more of those customers that have existing equipment that they paid for, that is still under contract, but they still choose to take everything that Cato can offer to them and be a full SASE deployment. And this is, I think today, over 85% of our customers use all our security and networking capabilities combined.
We have that conversation about not letting the depreciation cycle determine your technology strategy.
Yeah,
more often than we would like to. It is still a really big obstacle to rationalizing an IT infrastructure or rationalizing an IT strategy. And I think that is going to be one of those breaks on IT delivering at the speed of business that the business can take off at any time it decides to. So I like to think SASE is going to help that along considerably. SD-WAN has been helping that along. People have thrown away the routers and just replacing them, even though there's still 2 years, 3 years left of depreciation.
Correct.
So let's wrap up with some words of wisdom. For folks who are about to embark on a SASE implementation, because everybody faces challenges in deploying any new solution. What should they keep top of mind when they run into one of these challenges? What should inspire them to keep going?
You mean in terms of when they deploy a SASE solution?
Yes,
when they hit the first...
They've decided to do it, and now they've got to persevere through the difficulties.
SASE is a service, and when you buy a service and you don't buy a product, the vendor doesn't see you as a single financial transaction, but kind of a relationship. And that means that you should really leverage the support service of the SASE vendor. It's something that I encourage prospects to evaluate during the POC. Open tickets, see how the SASE vendor responds to your support inquiries. But also when you go through the deployment, use the SASE provider accelerated deployment services when they have such. Leverage their support capabilities. It's a service, so the support is usually included in your contract. Benefit from the know-how and the experience of the SASE provider and leverage that. Don't try to go through all the hurdles by yourself and figure everything out. It's, it's a digital world. Everybody's available 24/7. Let's use that, Something doesn't work for me, I open with the SASE that I'm using. I open a ticket. Someone across the world will pick up this ticket and answer to me, give me an answer in minutes. Do the same with your SASE solution.
And for our part, I think we would say a lot of difficulties in deploying a new technology arise when you try and shoehorn it into exactly the same niche in the infrastructure and architecture that the old solution occupied. And you have to break free of that in part, and often, far too often, because you're conflating how you solved a problem using a specific solution with solving the base problem. And when you can solve that problem in an entirely different way, or in a similar but not exactly the same way, look at your processes, look at your policies, look at your requirements, and toss out the ones that were based on the technology you were using rather than the problem you were solving.
Right.
That is a great way to power through a lot of the problems that people experience, especially when they're rolling out security products. If it's a policy that you had in place and 10 years of practice, but it was all based on how your firewall rules had to be written, throw it out. and
I agree. I think that's a great advice. I think that's really great advice.
And that's it. That's us for today. Everybody, thanks for joining us for this. This was the third episode of Cato's Turbocharged by SASE Network Transformation in 2021 series. And thank you, Eyal, for joining us and sharing your perspectives and insights. It's been a real pleasure.
Likewise. Thank you very much, John.
Everyone attending, please make sure to pop over to the attachments section and register to join us for episode 4. And we'll see you then.
Thank you.